So thanks everyone for coming. My name is Jen. I'm the event coordinator for ALA student chapter. Thanks for coming. Our basically like a job panel event. Today we have Andrea Wolf, the director of the Career Education Services here, and she's kind of going to go over what the CAC has for us as options as we go through school and try to find a job. And then we have SLIS professors, Lisa Hussey and Laura Saunders, who will kind of, I believe Lisa has some experience with some hiring before, so she'll discuss what she's, maybe some tips and what she was looking for. And Laura had actually done some surveys, I think a year or so ago, of asking local universities, organizations, what they were looking for when they were hiring Simmons students. So she'll touch upon some of that. And then we hope at the end of their kind of panel discussion, open for questions and answers. So.
And I'll also just note that Laura and I have also had the experience of applying for jobs and everything that's part of that as well.
Sure.
Actually maybe we can start with what the CAC has, and then Laura and I can kind of build on those things.
Oh, okay. So, the Career Education Center is here to support all, undergraduate and graduate students as well as alumni. And we provide a variety of services. One is we provide individualized career coaching, and that's helpful for students to tune into whatever their needs are, whether it's the resume or practice interviewing, or how do you go about networking, or if you're in the middle of the job search and you're finding it difficult, how we can advise you to market yourself more impactfully. So there's we're all, professionals and trained in career management, so we help you with that. One piece that we do in career coaching that's very helpful for students is to identify your strengths and your values, and to really be able to hone in on the language to market yourself effectively, because we know that the resume will get you in the door, but the interview will get you the job. And so there are a set of skills that we can help you with in that regard. We also provide, and we work very closely with SLIS. I have to say it now correctly. I feel like I have a list. But anyway, we co-sponsor a career fair in the spring where we bring in over 20 to 25 employers. It's a great opportunity for you to, meet them and identify ahead of time which ones would interest you. So we have listings of jobs also in the Career Education Center, as well as I know that SLIS has a job bank. I'm going to show you on our website a lot more resources that we have. So should I just go over there and do that? Yeah. All right, I'll get up and I'll go over here.
Can everybody see okay?
Yeah.
I just want to be sure I'm not in the way.
So this is the Career Education. This is our website, and as you can see, I'm going to go to graduate students. Okay, as you see down here, there's a section for library. Oops, what did I do? Sorry, I'm not. Library and Information Science. Okay, so it's a specific website, that focuses on the resources and skills we offer. So there's information on the Job Outlook, the Occupational Outlook Handbook. There are links to positions, what it is to be an archivist, a computer network system database administrator, all these kinds of career areas, as well as new areas in the field of information sciences. And a lot of students aren't aware of this. It explains our full range of services. So if I click on here, you can see some of these things that I spoke about, what the individual coaching is about, the career workshops. We have a panel of events. Career fair, we bring in employers, including in your area, and we oftentimes set up information tables. And we have our own CareerLink, Cash is for work study, but CareerLink has internships and job listings, and we have many that come in also in addition to what you get in your area. probably the best resources ever are at the Beatley Library. Why is that? Years ago, there was a donor that donated funding for a specific career resource library at Simmons, and we used to be located down the hall here. And it was just a few years ago that we relocated into Beatley Library, but you can only imagine that this library was created by library science students, and it has the richest resources. In fact, it's been noted by Princeton Review that Simmons College has large career resources. So if we go to this page here, you're going to see that, well, this is not, that's not what I was looking for. There is, career guides is what I was looking for. Okay, great. Okay, so,
And then career, I think it's in the middle there.
okay.
They've redesigned.
Thank you so much, because it's different than what I. So if you look here, there are all these careers by discipline. So let's look at library science. And we'll scroll down. Sorry, here we go. And here's everything, what do I do with this major? Internships and residency programs, graduate school, and here's a section on finding a job. These are some of the richest resources imaginable. A lot of the students who come to our office are completely unaware of this now. And yet, there are a lot of students in library and information sciences that know about this. Why? Because you guys are some of the best researchers of any of our students at Simmons College. We have found that the library students, information science students, really know how to dig in and research. I think one of the areas where there's some need for additional skills is how to present yourself in the market. And in this day and age, you have to, presentation skills are incredibly important. How you differentiate yourself. And you know, many people choose library science because maybe in some ways they can work in a back office, but you also need to be on the front lines. There's both the back and the front. And employers are really looking for those set of skills where you can work on a team, present yourself well, have all the things they're looking for, including the things that you get trained in the library science program. But again, I encourage you to look at all these fabulous resources and take advantage of the Career Education Center and what we have to offer. See, even networking resources, it's fabulous. We had a career resource managers conference here. We had all the career offices in the Boston, New England area come to Simmons College, and they looked at our career resources, and that was off the charts compared to anywhere else. So please do take advantage of it. And I think that's probably a good start. I can answer questions later, because I like to turn it over to you. Okay?
I'll move back now. Laura, by the way, Laura, Phil Lynn can jump in at any time as I'm talking here, but when you're applying for jobs, a couple things you kind of want to consider. One of the things I always encourage students to look for, I mean, because you guys, I know, are looking at jobs going, wow, this would be my dream job, if only I had this, if only I had that. Don't just think about the experience that you have as in libraries or in archives. You should also be looking at your previous work experience and how that applies to what you want to do. To give you guys a really strong example, I was in retail for about 10 years. And, I didn't actually have library experience like, I know many people who come in. I didn't have a day of library experience when I entered grad school. Had never worked in a library. But I had no problem justifying why I actually had strong reference experience, because those 10 years were in bookstores. And just like librarians, I got that blue book you had on the front table 3 weeks ago. Can you remember what it was? Which, by the way, I want to tell everybody, I actually identified a book with that kind of a question once. So, but it's, it's understanding how those things fit in. The other thing is, I strongly suggest taking huge advantage of the CEC. Having your resume reviewed multiple times. Understanding that, by the way, your resume is not a fixed document. It should be a very fluid document. You may have multiple versions depending on the types of jobs you're applying for, you know, but you wanna, keeping in mind, as Andrea pointed out, you know, the resume gets you in the door. The resume only gets you in the door if the employer is impressed by it, if it catches their attention. You know, you have a resume that doesn't really speak to your strengths or that doesn't seem to, you know, deal with what they're looking at, they're gonna put you to the side without question. You know, you wanna make sure that you're presenting the best that you can. And that's not only the resume, it's the cover letter. You know, part of what you're doing in the cover letter is explaining why those 5 years in retail should be really important to that public library that you're applying to. Or the fact that you may not have professional experience, but you and your family have, you know, you and your mother used to make paper books, and explain how that actually helps you with doing preservation. You know, being able to take and talk about those things. Talking about yourself in a confident manner. You know, I mean, that's another one, is that you're selling yourself. You know, this is not a passive process in any way, shape, or form. You have to be very actively selling yourself as a part of this. And by the way, for all of you that are sitting there going, but I hate doing that, at what point do you think any of us up here enjoy it? Nobody actually really enjoys doing that, but we do it. Because, and you know, I mean, here's the thing, is that if you want the job, then why aren't you selling yourself? Why aren't you telling them why you are the best candidate in the world for this job? Why are they considering anybody else? Because, my God, it would be silly to not hire you. You know, I mean, these are the things you kind of have to approach in it. And, you know, I mean, when I've done hiring on different things, I usually look for what we've said in the ad. That's one of the big things I will often look for. Are you addressing what's in the ad? Are you addressing what we say that we want? Don't make me question why you sent in your resume. I mean, I've seen this happen before. You know, I had a friend, not in my case, but a friend of mine who worked at a public library in Wyoming, you know, would go through the applications wondering why people were applying for these positions. Not that she didn't think they were qualified, or not that she didn't think that they could do it, but at no point did they tell her how they could, you know, they kind of just said, you know, it was for a supervisory position, and they were like, I have a degree. You know, I can do this. But she, you know, I mean, why can you do this? You know, and so they ended up eliminating a lot of them because no point did anybody say, you know, I have a degree, I have this many years of, you know, I have this experience, it'd be, you know, it really is the next step I wanna take in my job, you know, those kinds of things. And one of the big things I've always seen, you know, talk to the ad. That's what the cover letter is for. Make sure that you are addressing what they say that they want, and explain how your experience addresses that. With that in mind, you don't want that cover letter to be more than a page, because most employers are not gonna read past that page.
Whereas on the other hand, I think we would say for library students in particular, I mean, a lot of you are coming here, you know, you're already getting a second degree, if not a third or a fourth, some of you. Most of you have work experience, so I would say most of the time we say if your resume goes over a page, that's okay. But the cover letter, yes, you would want to.
You need to make that succinct, because really, they're gonna stop reading after, actually, they're probably gonna stop reading after about 3 paragraphs.
The other thing about the cover letter, it's really a writing sample. And if your job involves writing and you have one spelling error, it's in the garbage can, you won't be seen. So the cover letter is really that personal introduction, the connection between what you bring to the table to that specific job, how you can be of value to the employer, knowing what the employer is all about, not writing this sort of generic kind of, well, I'm interested in applying my skills in X, Y, Z, but rather I'm interested in your organization because of the work you do in X, Y, Z, and my background in A, B, C, that kind of thing. So, very important. People say, oh, why do we need a cover letter in this day and age, you know, because now there's so much online applications. Well, again, you know, I just recently hired a new staff person, and those cover letters were critically important. You know, it made a big difference in who I chose to interview.
In fact, what I would say is you should use the same language from the job posting, the job ad, in your cover letter and your resume. So for instance, if they say something like, we're looking for people, you know, we're looking for people to serve a diverse population, take that word diverse and integrate it into your resume and your cover letter. So you can say, you know, I've worked in retail with diverse people. however you want to do it. A couple things that I wanted to pick up on. One of the first things is, as both Andrea and Lisa were saying, you really do need to differentiate yourself. And one of the things that the employers that I talked to said was, you know, it is a relatively tight job market, and they do understand that, but what discourages them is when they get a stack of resumes and it's obvious that some of these are the exact same resume that you sent out to every single job that was out there, right? And what they want to see is something that really speaks to their particular job and their particular organization. So it is useful sometimes to even have several versions of your resume that highlight different aspects of your experience. Absolutely, you want to tailor your cover letter so you have a different cover letter for every single job that you apply to, where you're speaking specifically to that job that you're applying to. Because as I said, if the employers see something and it's kind of just boilerplate and it's obvious that you sent that same exact resume and cover letter to every single job that you applied for, they're going to be less interested. Especially if you do make any mistakes, like sending a job, an application to a job at Tufts and saying, I'm really interested in this job you have posted at BU, or something like that, right? That's definitely not going to work. Just really quickly, a couple of other things that I got from the employers when I was talking to them. Celeste, I went over a lot of this in class the other day, but as a recap, they're definitely interested in technology skills. This comes as no surprise to everybody, but one of the things that's difficult is what do they mean when they say tech skills? And it really varies hugely from place to place and from position to position. So in other words, not everybody has to be a programmer, not everyone has to be a systems analyst, you don't all have to know Python or even HTML, unless you do, right? So the point is that you really need to know specifically what that particular kind of organization or that particular position requires. In a lot of public libraries, they're looking for basic hardware and software skills, people who can troubleshoot, people who can sort of download and manage systems, and people who can teach other people. In academic libraries, sometimes you're getting a little bit more into the system, and certainly you need to be able to at least speak to the people who are designing and managing your systems for you. And then, then it gets more specialized from there. But one of the big things that people were telling me as far as technology goes is that they're not necessarily looking for a very discrete set of skills, but what they're looking for is your ability to adapt and to learn new stuff. Right? Because they know, as well as you all know, that what you learn today is obsolete tomorrow anyway, because the new system's going to come out or the new upgrade is going to come out. And so what they want is people who are not afraid to just keep learning, and people who aren't afraid to get in and play with the system and figure it out for themselves. Because the other reality is there's not a lot of on-the-job training. You're pretty much expected to just hit the ground running, and they do understand that you don't necessarily know everything when you start, but they expect you to be able to learn it on your own. So being flexible like that, feeling comfortable enough with technology to just go in and use it. And you can do that. You all are going to be using technology throughout the program here, and you have lots of opportunities to learn more. Whether it's taking a full-length course, or it's going to the tech lab and attending their workshops, or going to conferences and professional development opportunities, or even just coming to the collaboratory or the tech lab and playing with what's here. Get someone to show you how to use the 3D printer, right? Just figure out what's here and try it out, play with it, so that the idea is you get comfortable with learning new things. So that's the tech part, and the other part is the soft skills, and that's the other huge area that our employers are really interested in. As Andrea was saying, they really want people who can write well, and that cover letter is going to speak to that to a certain extent. They want people who can write well in different situations, so understanding that writing a cover letter or writing a memo to your boss is different than writing an annual report, is different than writing a research paper. So understanding and being able to do all of that, and then the communication skills and the interpersonal skills are hugely important. Like Lisa was saying, the employers were telling me that sometimes some of their best hires were the people who had retail experience or had been like wait staff at a restaurant and stuff like that, because they got it. They knew how to work with the customers, they knew how to work with the difficult people, they knew how to multitask and work in a fast-paced environment. So don't think that that experience is irrelevant. Learn how to talk about it in the context of an information setting. That's absolutely what the employers are looking for. Last two things I would say quickly. With all of that said about transferable experience and stuff like that, they are looking for people with solid information work experience as well. So do anything that you can to get that kind of experience while you're here. Whether it's volunteering, whether it's through the internship program, whether it's looking for part-time or full-time jobs, any kind of experience you can get on your resume is going to be helpful. And then the last thing that I would say is something that I totally forgot. Now, the last thing that I was going to say is you have to learn how to talk about these things, I guess is the point. That it's easy to say on your resume or on your cover letter, hey, I have great interpersonal skills, but that's a lot harder to demonstrate to an employer in an interview or a resume than tech skills are, right? You can list specific programs that you've used. You can say that, I'm an expert in this or that. You have to learn how to talk about and demonstrate those soft skills. So think about specific experiences. A time when you did have to work with a difficult person and how you worked through it. What are some examples of times that you've used, your writing skills to good effect and things like that. So think about really specific experiences that talk to those different kinds of tech skills. And the good news is that with the employers that I talk to, they think very highly of Simmons SLIS graduates. They really have good things to say about you guys. They've worked with a lot of you. They've hired a lot of you. So you're already coming out with that sort of pedigree that speaks well. So that should help.
I was going to say, kind of building a little bit on what Laura said, I want to spend a few minutes also talking about the interview. Because, it's not enough to get noticed. You then have to, again, sell yourself a second time. And this is where those interpersonal skills become really obvious. It's being able, one of the most important things you need to do is before the interview, research. You really, you want to say, I would love working here, and they say, why? And you go, because it would be a job. You want to be able to really kind of back up anything you say. I would love working here. Why? Well, I love the community that you serve, and you have these 3 programs I would be interested in learning more about. Your graduates seem to go on to these types of jobs. Your faculty have these kind of publications that, were things that I read in my undergrad and I would love to help work. That kind of thing, being able to kind of, really point out some of those things. The other one is also very much in how you present yourself. This is, I think, in LIS, we tend to think that we're a more casual profession, and Laura and I are both wearing jeans right now.
We're not teaching today.
I'm not.
I was going to say, here's the thing, we don't teach today. Anybody who's been in any of my classes knows that I do not wear jeans when I am in the classroom. When I am presenting myself as a professional, I am usually, at very least, business casual. But it's just, that's kind of a part of it. When I've gone to any interview, and this has literally been since I got out of high school, when I go to any interview, I always, the very least I've ever worn is a dress. And I get a sense of what is seen as normal wear, and then I up it a level. When I came here, I was wearing a full suit to interview here, despite the fact that I was talking with people in sweatpants and t-shirts. Didn't matter. That kind of thing. And, because part of that is showing, when you show up looking professional, you show that you're taking it seriously. It's one of the really big things, is that I know that we've had feedback in the past about people who've shown up in jeans and a blazer. Or people who, show up, maybe nice, but it's a t-shirt. It really doesn't kill you to put on slacks or a skirt and a blazer and a nice shirt.
Yeah, the professionalism is a really important part of it, and that is something that some of the employers said as well, that they had some experience with some of their newer hires or interns or whatever, where they felt like they weren't exhibiting the kind of professionalism they would want. So how you dress is absolutely part of it. Being on time or a little bit early is certainly part of it. And what I would say too is, of course, being dressed well for an interview, being on time for an interview, but really try to treat any of your professional experiences that way. So if you're an intern, show up on time for your job, dress appropriately for your job. Even when you're going to conferences or events here at the school, you know, again, it's not that you have to be dressed in a suit all the time, but think about it, anytime you're interacting in these situations, you're meeting potential network people who may next time around be interviewing you for a job or things like that. So you always want to try to present yourself as professionally as possible.
And that's we do a lot of work with our students in preparing, you know, even questions about how do I dress, how do I communicate, how do I tell my story. So, I mean, a lot of this takes preparation and practice, and I think you know, everything you said is what we reinforce over and over again. And it is, you have to up your game when you're in the job market, you have to present yourself professionally. And it's not, it's how you look, it's how you communicate, you know, it's your timeliness, you know. And when you start a new job, it's also very important, the whole onboarding process, how do you begin, can make a big difference. And a lot of good communication, asking questions, following up, tuning into your boss, what their style of communication is, very important. These are things that sometimes we don't speak enough about. You know, we're so anxious to help people get the job, but that we don't do as much work on, well, how do you begin a job? And there's, you know, books on the first 90 days. And there's a lot of tips that we can provide you on how to be successful as you begin a new job too.
One other thing I want to say in the interview process, or actually two things. We were talking about being timely. If you haven't been somewhere before, do a dry run. Do, you know, if you're taking the T, do it, and by the way, try to do it at the time you would be going, because I know for my commute, an hour makes a difference about how long it's gonna take me. Like if I leave at 8 in the morning, it's a very different commute on the T than if I leave at 9. You know, I mean, keep that in mind, have that, you know, put that in place, or if you're driving, those kinds of things. And then add time. You know, I mean, you know, if you end up there an hour early, you might even want to plan it, you know, again, do that dry run, end up early, find the closest Starbucks, or, you know, what have you, so that you have time to sit down and think through it. Because nothing's going to make a worse impression than running in the door just barely on time. But the other one is during the interview process itself, this is going to be part of the, you know, they're going to get a sense of your oral communication. One of the things I would tell you is that when there are pauses, or when you are done speaking, be done speaking. And I say this because you'll get, people will pause, they'll be waiting to see if you say anything else, and a lot of times when you're nervous, you will jump in and just keep going. And you know, if you're done saying it, if they want to know more, they will actually ask the question for more. You know, don't be, you know, an answer that's supposed to be long going, yes, that's not going to be any better. But, you know, if you feel that you've explained it and you've said something, stop. And then if they, like I said, if they want to know more, they're going to say more. Otherwise, you know, if you jump in, you're going to come across a bit as babbling.
Another thing is, one big mistake in interviewing is when an employer will say, maybe at the end, do you have any questions? And someone says, well, gee, I don't think so, you've answered everything. You always have a question. You always come prepared with at least 2 good questions. There's always something to ask, including what's the biggest challenge you're facing now? What are some of the changes and trends in your field? You know, what does it take to be successful in this organization? You know, what is your management style? There's 1,001 questions you can ask. It shows the level of commitment and more in-depth understanding of wanting to work, you know, successfully in that organization. So come prepared. The other thing I want to say about interviewing, which is interesting, is that, you know, it's sort of like this back and forth. I'm the interviewer, you're the interviewer. It's sort of like shooting questions at you and back and forth. There's also a way in interviewing that you can have piggyback questions. So I might ask you something, what's the biggest challenge you've had in your, you know, in that internship experience? And then you share it, you say, you know, can you share a challenge that you're now facing? You can have conversational back and forth kind of interviewing where you can learn more about the employer also. Because ultimately, it's about a fit. It's a 2-way fit. It's not just a one-way that they want you. It's, do I want to work for that employer? Does that fit, you know, their style, the organization, the culture? Does it fit to my values, the way I like to operate? Incredibly important, because the reason most people are unhappy in jobs is not the content of the work. It's who's the manager and who's on the team. So be very careful to learn about all of that by asking good questions or having a chance to meet people in the organization. Very important.
Do you guys have questions?
Yeah,
for
should we
us?
open up to you?
Yeah.
Remember, you always have questions.
Yes.
I wonder if you could talk just a little bit more about the resume. Like, I'm never sure how far back to go in my employment history. Like, I always try and keep it to one page, but now as I'm sort of switching careers, I think sort of everything that shows up for the last decade may or may not relate, and things before might relate. And so I'm never sure sort of how in depth or how far.
It's
go.
whatever's relevant to the position, and that would be something to go over, you know, with one of the career coaches, because we do a lot of work with people. I mean, if, you know, sometimes we say it's best maybe not to go beyond 15 years, but if there's something in your previous experience, you can list it that's very relevant, because it shows those transferable skills that are very valuable. So, you know, my answer to you is it depends. Yeah, there is no right or wrong. It's not right or wrong to have a one-page resume. It's not wrong. In fact, I say it depends. The one-page cover letter, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because no one's gonna read beyond the one page in the cover letter. In fact, the cover letter is supposed to pique their interest in wanting to read your resume. Okay.
I was gonna say, I can tell you on my resumes at times, depending on the position, I have had times where I've gone back to positions I had right out of high school. But the reason for that was because I had supervisory experience as part of that, and it was showing a progression of responsibility and management. And that was one of the reasons why, it's not on there now, but there have been times where I've included that when I was actually applying for faculty positions, because one of the things I teach is management. And I wanted to show a strong history, not just of the knowledge, but of the experience. You know, and I wouldn't necessarily, I don't think they really care about what I was doing back in 1990, but at the same time, I tend, you know, depending on what it is, I think it's important to show that progression.
So in that case, right, if you decide that there's something from 1990 that was really important, right, presumably then you don't feel the need to list everything that then happened afterward, right? But I've also been told that you're never supposed to have gaps in your resume, because everyone's like, well, then what were you doing? But, right, if the jobs that you had from, I don't know, 1998 to 2004 were not important, right, like.
Usually, how I've covered it, and feel free to jump in on this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
One of the
Go
things that I've done depending on and again, this is one where I've tailored it depending on it, on what it is. I've had it broken up where I've had like library experience, and then I had management experience, so that, you know, they could kind of see some of that, and they could, you know, I mean, I was obviously pointing out some very specific things. And I was willing to speak to any gaps. I mean, that's the other thing, be willing to address gaps if they bring that up, you know, it's just, yeah, honestly, actually, when I do that, I generally don't have gaps, but I mean, like I said, it's really kind of making it very specific depending on what they're looking at.
I agree with that. I mean, I think, you know, you want to put in, you know, your library experience section, and then you can have previous experience or additional experience or management experience or teaching experience, whatever experience you want to highlight. I think those are important sections.
Yeah, I'm willing, but
But
most
we're
people
happy
go
to
back
review it
mine.
with you. You know, you can set up an appointment in the Career Education Center. Our career coaches will go over it with you. We have drop-in hours. We see lots of student resumes. Do take advantage of us. We've seen thousands of SLIS resumes. Still trying to say.
And by the way, if, I'm willing to bet that if you want help with a specific job that you're applying to, bring the ad with you.
Yes.
That will help quite a bit for
Yes.
them to give you
Thank you.
suggestions.
Yes. Good point.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So sometimes I read job listings and I think, oh, this would be such a great fit. I have all of the qualities they're looking for, but I don't have that, just one of them, or, you know. So in the cover letter, are you supposed to speak to that? Like, hey, I have all these great qualities, but I'm not meeting that one? Or does that draw attention to
Yeah,
it?
it draws attention. So my view is that you highlight what you do have. There's some things that you can learn, you know, on the job. You don't want to highlight what you don't have. You want to highlight what you bring to the table and how you will add value. And then if there's one little piece that isn't an exact fit, it'll come, you know, it may come up in the interview. Or you might say that you're a quick learner on, you know, if that's an important piece of the job, then you say, although you're familiar with this X system or way of work, whatever it is, that you're a quick learner, you've learned other systems such as that. You can show a parallel kind of thing. It just, again, it depends on how important a qualification that is for that job. And again, we can help you with that.
And I mean, I've done that, you know, I mean, I've applied for plenty of jobs where I didn't have everything that they were listing. I focus very much on the things they are listing, and if I feel that there's something that was related to what they listed, but perhaps not exact, I will try to explain how that matches it.
And I think like Andrea said, it depends on how important that one qualification is to the overall job, because a lot of job listings have a laundry list of qualifications, and they are not necessarily expecting every single person who applies to have every single thing. But there are gonna be some usually that are sort of more key, and those, if you don't have them, you might wanna try to address them by saying that there's something else that's relevant. If it seems like more of a minor point, I would just ignore it.
And you'll see in ads that will say requirements preferred, you know, and, you know, in the preferred, you know, if you have the preferreds, address them, but if you don't have them, ignore them. You know, because again, they'd love it if people had them, but.
And you know, it's interesting, because if you, let's just say hypothetically speaking, you had every single thing that they put. There are some times that we've recommended that where you can write a resume where you actually put versus a paragraph, their qualification, their requirements, my qualifications on the left side, what they want on the right side, what you bring to the table, is another way to really put it out there. But more often than not, we suggest paragraph, you know, narrative form. But that's another effective technique, particularly if you've got everything and more of what they need. There's samples of cover letters on our website for library science, FYI.
And the more if you can actually, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say one thing. If you have a name, address it to the person to whom it may concern. No.
Yeah, really. Dear sir.
Yeah, usually they'll say, you know, they'll put it to the attention of, you know, address it to that person, because it showed that you paid attention to the entire ad.
You mentioned a career fair in the spring. One, do you suggest people come dressed in a suit for that? Is that something that you show up because you'll be shaking hands and perhaps meeting the people who might be doing the hiring?
Yes, I would pump
Okay.
it up. Absolutely, why not? It's a first impression, the first 30 seconds. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, although if, you also, can you stand up for a moment? How you are dressed is actually very nice. It's a business casual, it's not a suit. You work this afternoon? Yes, but I was gonna say, I mean,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, you don't need to wear a suit. You know, you could wear like a nice, I'm wearing like, this is like a sweater, but it's, you know,
Right.
you're wearing it, that's nice too. So you wanna look a little more professional than casual. Right, yeah. You don't have to be cookie cutter, black suit, white,
Yeah.
white shirt, you know, real simple, you know, you can have your own personality in your clothes.
Well, and you can, I was gonna say, you can do that, with any of your professional wear. You know, I tell this to my students all the time, I'm not asking you to completely change how you dress,
Right.
but figure out how you make yourself look very professional in the manner in which you like to dress.
You wanna be comfortable, right, and you wanna be yourself.
And when, I think you had said like 25 people or organizations usually come to the fair, is it something that before or ahead of time you ask to say maybe the types of jobs that they're there? Because I love the job line that we get like once a week.
Yes.
And then I can say just from like the one that came out yesterday, like 5 of the 12 were for library director jobs,
Yeah.
which someday, God love it, I'll be there.
I saw that, yeah, it's great.
So I guess what I'm saying is if the 20 to 25 people who are coming are asking for 2 to 4 years experience, or people who are graduate students and not 8+ years experience, types of jobs that's why they're there. Do you
It's a
know what I'm
mix.
saying?
I think I know what you're saying, and what I would say is it tends to be a mix. In fact, we've even had people who have come to the career fair who don't even have an opening, but maybe they're anticipating some. So it's a wide mix. Usually Claire will make a list available of who is coming a week or so ahead of time, and then you can visit their website and check to see what they have posted. So, but what I would say is, if there are places that are coming that do have an opening that looks interesting to you, absolutely find them, talk to them, give them your resume. But then if there are places there that you think you'd be interested in, but they don't have an opening right now, still go and talk to them, tell them why you're interested. Maybe if you have a business card or something like that, you can leave it with them, or ask them, could you follow up with them at another time? So don't get discouraged even if there aren't a lot of places there at that moment that have an exact opening that's a match for you, but use it as a networking opportunity.
I would also say when you have that, when you see that 2 to 4 years experience, and you maybe you don't have that, go and talk to them about what they see as experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because that's always like I said, I mean, I went in without I did internships when I was in my program. I was very, and I got a part-time job at interlibrary loan at the university library, so I had that experience, but I didn't have a huge background experience, but, I was the top candidate for the position that I got. Matter of fact, after they interviewed me, they canceled the other person and just offered me the job. And by the way, I'm not saying because, woohoo, I'm that awesome, but they felt I was a really good fit. And perhaps professional experience in that case wasn't anywhere near as important as the other skills that I brought in. And they saw, again, they actually did see a lot of my bookstore life as experience. So, it doesn't hurt to say, you say you need 3 to 5 years experience. What kind of experience are you looking for? Because they may say, well, we'd love it if it's in a library, but what we'd love to have is people who have experience working with children.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. In fact, some of the employers that I talked to said the same thing, and they said that they do understand that opportunities are limited right now and stuff like that. So, they said even if you have volunteer experience, some of them will count that. So I would say absolutely, don't necessarily discount it just because you don't have exactly your library experience. And then the other thing that I would say is if it's close, if it's something you're really interested in and if it's pretty close, apply for it anyway. I always tell my advisees, if you don't apply, you have no chance of getting the job.
Yeah.
If you do apply, you never know. Maybe even if you don't have quite the number of years experience they're asking for, or there's that one qualification that was missing or whatever, it might still work out, but if you don't apply, it definitely will not.
And there's also the possibility, although, I won't say this is as common, but it does happen that you didn't get the job that you had initially applied for, but they see they've reviewed your stuff, and something else comes up, and they're like, wait a minute, there was that applicant. I did actually have that happen to a friend of mine who applied for a job, and he didn't get it, and then they called him and asked him to apply for actually a better job with more money and more responsibility, and he was like, okay, I loved his analogy. This is kind of like, my best, your friend has come to told me that you like me, I ask you out, you say no, and now I find out you want me to take you to the prom. If I ask you, am I actually going to get a yes for the prom? And he did get the other job. But it was one of those things is that he didn't get the first one, but there was something on his, and I think the reason why he didn't get the first one was because they went, we really kind of would love to have him do this one. But again, these things can happen where maybe, you didn't get this first one, but they remember there was something about your resume and cover letter that make you think that this other one might be, better.
It reminds me of that it's always important to write a thank you note. And even if you get turned down for the, sorry, we had to pick another candidate, still say thank you for the opportunity. If ever another position opens up in your organization, I would be very interested. Please keep me in mind.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things make a big difference.
Huge.
And in the end, the career fair is a real chance for you to learn about these different organizations. It is sort of like you mentioned, Laura, networking. Yeah, it's a chance for you to ask some questions. What do you look for in hires, and what does it take to be successful? How do you grow in your organization? You get a chance to really collect some market data from all these employers. You're exploring, and some of them may have opportunities and some may not. And but yet you're going to grow in your career, and you're going to have many different jobs during your lifetime. And the more you can learn at a career fair about all these different opportunities, the better you will be prepared longer term.
Can I just ask a follow-up question about the thank yous? Is it appropriate to do that via email email at this point? Should we actually be like mailing physical cards? Does that kind of depend on?
So it depends, you know, we don't have a hard, or fast rule. I think that in this day and age, you know, the fastest way is the email, you know, cause, but I've gotten handwritten thank you cards that I've really enjoyed, you know, when applicants apply, and either one works. That's
And
my
one of the
advice.
things that I would also pay attention to on that is that most of your communication with them on email? You know, was there, you know, I mean, does this seem to be a way that they communicate, you know, with the candidates? Cause I mean, I've actually had, you know, times where literally the first time we talked in person was when I showed up. You know, because you know, email's a quick way to do it, so I mean, if that seems to be a primary communication, then, yeah, of course email's, you know, very easy to do.
I know we don't have much time, but I wonder if you could address briefly sort of the importance and role of networking, because I find, like, as I'm telling other people in my life, I'm going to library school, they're like, oh, hey, I know this librarian, you should talk and meet with her, or I know this person, you should talk and meet with her, and I feel like in a lot of cases it can be who you know and who you've met and who remembers you outside of just the resume and the cover letter.
I can't tell you how, my last 4 jobs, including Simmons, Bain, Harvard School of Public Health, all through networking. Now, I had to go through the formal channels of applying, right, putting my application, but I knew someone there, and that someone said to the person that was a hiring manager, take a look at Andrea. So my resume, which was in a heap, maybe it was in the middle of the heap, went to the top of the pile, and they called me, you know. So you can never underestimate the importance of networking. The other thing about it is also that that there's a network here through Simmons alums, right, which you can tap into, and many people don't do that, which is a shame. I think sometimes people get intimidated by the term networking, because it sounds so like you're asking for something. And I like to use the term of networking is like asking for air. What is air? Air is an acronym. You're asking for advice, you're asking for information, and you're asking for, R would be referrals. Is there anyone else that you recommend that I speak to? Now, I know in my history of a professional in this field for many years that I will not respond to networking contacts unless I know the person that referred them. If I just, I heard you're the director and I'd like to learn about career management, and they're sort of like from the greater, wider world, I don't have time for that. But if they're recommended from a friend or someone that I know, or they're an alum of the school that I went to, I'm gonna see them. You know, so when you have that personalized connection, it makes a big difference. The other thing is that it's a great chance to learn from people. Informational interviewing is a great chance to learn from people what they like and don't like about their jobs. Now, I know there's a built-in source here at Simmons. Your faculty, they've all had different careers. The career librarians at Beatley have been in different fields. You could set up informational interviews with them. I know I've spoken to Jennifer Ferguson, who says, you know, they're very happy to speak with students about the story of their careers. And you can really learn a lot from people. You can learn a lot online, but the best, I think, learning is through people and their experience and how they perceive their field and advice they can provide you. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have anything you want to add to the networking theme?
Well, I was gonna say, one of the things that has, I mean, just like Andrea, networking has actually helped me out at different times in my career from various angles, but even more than that, it's not just, you know, perhaps helped get me my foot in the door, but it's also sometimes helped me find out about that there was a door for me to get my foot in. You know, just in general, like before things have even been posted, or, you know, somebody who knows what I like to do or the stuff that I've done and been like, oh, this is opening up because they know what I do, or they, you know, and this is where at times students can benefit from my network. You know, when I have people like, do you have a student who does this? Do you have a student who's interested in that?
And I think the other thing to remember about networking is that it's a long-term kind of thing, right? So it's not that you meet somebody and there's gonna be an immediate outcome of it necessarily, but for instance, I know one of our alums that I had gotten to know while she was here, she's been graduated, I think, over a year now. In the meantime, I met one of our PhD students whose work was hiring, and I was able to put the two of them in contact, and she got hired by him. And so, and it was just because we had all kind of created a network, and it took a while for it to pay off for her, but it did in the end, right?
Well, I was gonna say, and to give you kind of an example for me here at Simmons, I met Jim Matarazzo back in 2000 when I was working at the University of Arizona. Now, I didn't get the job here because I knew Jim Matarazzo, because he wasn't even part of the initial interview. But I can tell you, when I walked in that first morning, and a former professor here, Jim Boffman, went to go to introduce me, and Jim Matarazzo went, "Oh, so lovely to see you," and pulled me in and kissed me on the cheek. That changed to some degree the perception of me, because obviously I knew somebody who's actually very influential in this field. And by the way, at no point was I like, "Ooh, I'm going to use this." I didn't even know if Jim was going to be at that interview or be at that thing in the morning. I didn't know when I would see him, but it was a small thing, but I know it was something that, at least for the people in the room at the time, stuck in their minds in a very positive way, because Jim didn't introduce me like, "Oh yes, we've met." He introduced me as somebody he knew, or he immediately reacted to me as somebody that he knew and somebody that he enjoyed. And we were talking, that was 8 years after the first time I met him. That's.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I have to slip out to another meeting.
Yes. Well,
But you guys all know, you know me, you know where my office is, so anytime you have questions, please definitely feel free to stop by.
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sure many of you guys have classes coming up too, but, realistically, any of us are happy to answer questions. Obviously, this is what Andrew does.
Yeah. And my staff, I don't do it all by myself, thank gosh. Anyway, but do come, we're here to support you, you've got great faculty here, this has been a very good session. If you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to come by and ask, set up an appointment, come for drop-in hours, we're here to support you, okay? We want you to be successful, right?
The other thing is, my office is downstairs. Please feel free to come and ask me questions if you want to know about what I've gone through in my own hiring process and some of the things that I did and what was good and what wasn't. I'm more than happy to talk to people about that as well.
We all have our stories.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.